one of the things I've learned very quickly is how difficult it is to communicate clearly, an expectation and intent to such a large group of people.
Yeah.
And I think that was something I underestimated. But then cascading that out, that message, that intent through the team and then to a customer was and is been probably one of the harder challenges. I think in terms of that, because there's so many factors that come into this,
Yeah.
I think, you're never going to get that message out about how a business has evolved. And, ultimately, you had Apogee pre-acquisition, which was a privately owned business that, was driven to deliver a product to a customer, but also to make profit, to grow, whereas HP have obviously acquired the business to build a closer relationship with the client and deliver end-to-end services. So then taking the sales force and trying to have them see that what you want to do with them has a much longer term benefit to them.
Yeah.
And I think trying to then express that to a client is very hard. When I was at, and I guess everyone from any industry can who's been in sales at any length of time will tell you it's the most frustrating thing is when you're trying to explain to a customer that you're there to deliver a long-term value and you're trying to sell against a perhaps a short-term sales methodology. It's quite hard to articulate that to a client because we're also clients as well as salespeople, and you yourself, when you're actually trying to explain to a customer what the intention of the business is, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to say that how do you demonstrate that what we want to be a long-term partner when in the past your behavior has been very short-term. So
Yeah.
I think that was a big challenge for us.
Yeah, no, it was such a massive challenge. And it's very interesting to hear you sort of talk about some of the difficulties and the time it takes sometimes to shift sort of habits that maybe people have had and shift the mindset. I mean, it's always a very difficult transition, that, isn't it? Moving from being an individual contributor to being a manager. What do you think were some of the mistakes you might have made as, in those early years? I mean,
Sure.
what
Yeah,
did you do looking back that didn't quite work?
Yeah, it was literally trying to duplicate myself by
Okay.
doing everything the way I did it. And I do believe that, success leaves clues and there are some things that people can leverage. But what I learned later is that everyone is different and you can win and get sales deals in a different way by being authentically you.
Right.
And that was something that I learned instead of trying to do exactly, and be me. It was like everyone's personality is different. So I had to learn to really meet people where they were, to let
Right.
them know that I care more about them as an individual and get to know them and their strengths and areas of opportunity, and then to help them to develop where they are. Some may
Yeah.
be more strong with, making prospecting calls. Others may be more strong in building rapport, and others may be more weak in actually, getting someone to agree to sign on the dotted line. But finding out what are their strengths, what are their areas of opportunities, and then having more of I'll call it a customized approach to the individual versus just a general blanket and everyone do it. This is how I did it. This is how you should do it.
But why, I suppose the central question is, why do relationships matter? Because there has been some research in the past which suggests that perhaps relationships aren't quite so important as other dimensions of trying to grab people's interest. But for you, why do you think relationships matter so much?
Well, I mean, I would argue against whatever research that you're suggesting or pointing to there, Phil. Certainly from my own research, relationships do matter. We all know that instinctively in our own day-to-day life. We're seeing that pervasively more recently with reviews and things like that from people leaving reviews on different sites for about what people have to say, individuals. But if you think specifically in the B2B world, relationships certainly do matter. When it comes to broadly speaking about our clients, perhaps if we're thinking from our client's perspective, on a B2B perspective, we think about their suppliers, we think about their partners, and that can actually be a differentiator, and is a differentiator in their success. Because if we think about how the relationship they have with their suppliers and partners impacts their ability to perform and outperform their competitors and deliver to their mandate to their shareholders, which is to grow revenue, to grow their market share, to grow profits, that's all dependent on them having successful relationships, whether it's about reducing their costs, reducing delivery times of their products and services, improving the customer experience. All of these things come to play from bringing to bear successful relationships with suppliers and partners. And that in itself is a reason why relationships matter for our clients. And then from our perspective as supplying clients, obviously we get to benefit from that because we're delivering a service to them, and then it becomes a bit stickier. We've got a lot more skin in the game, I guess. There's shorter sales cycles when we're planning to sell to those specific clients, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that suppliers, the clients are prepared to pay more for a service that they get that they can trust. So that's where the two converge. But then if I just step out a bit and just think about why relationships matter from a data point perspective, you can think about, say, if you just try and join a few things together. So this is a slide that I tend to present when I'm talking to professional services firms. And I remember presenting to a senior executive at one of the big four, and he was presenting to his team about the value of leveraging relationships. And I showed some statistics. One of them was that people where satisfied clients are 86% of satisfied clients are prepared to make a recommendation or an introduction for you. Things like that. And then when you think about when you're meeting someone, they're 5 times more likely to meet you via an introduction. And I would argue it's even more than that in today's world, when we see a lot of other ways and means to do cold outreach. And there's a bunch of other statistics that support the case there, where if there's trust in the relationship and there's an existing relationship, it moves 30% faster. And one statistic that I really appreciate is if you're the first person to go to a senior executive with the right solution, you're going to win 74% of those opportunities. So that's winning 3 out of 4 opportunities. So you need to be first there. So you need to have the route to that individual. And obviously you need to have the right proposition. And that all leads back to, how do you build a relationship? And I mean, back to my doctorate research, I guess, is understanding what is important to clients. And I think that's where you hinted at it before about your doctorate research and mine, and we won't go into a lot of it today, but it's really about understanding what are the priorities of clients and aligning to that, and not being a salesperson trying to sell things. So if you come to the table with that premise in mind, and then you're leveraging relationships to get to the right people and present the right solutions, then I'd find it very difficult to argue against the fact that relationships very much do matter.
Dylan, I would be really interested to you've, as I understand it, from what you just said, you've been through the program. What's been the practical application of Phil Squire's focus on these values? What does that mean in the practical world of frontline, the life of a frontline salesperson?
Values wise, it's sort of a difficult question to answer at the moment, because I see a lot online, and I probably got a little bit more indoctrinated by some of the American sales, I don't know if you gurus or sharks or people like that. Eddie's probably cringing at this moment.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. But,
No, I think, for what it's worth, the facial expression, Dylan, sharks is a really good supplement for gurus.
yeah. but then there's this, I don't know, for me, when I think of like the pinnacle of a salesperson, or like someone who's billing loads, getting loads of sales and making lots of money, that's probably what I and this is ultimately what Consalia is about, the sales transformation about. It's still what I personally think about and what I've seen through my experience working as the person taking the most money home. Whether or not that's the right thing for the business, for the customer, for anyone, I don't know whether that, like, having that or becoming that is the right thing or not for me. There's probably a bit more of an existential question there, but rather than an answer. But that's what comes
Dylan, great comments. Existential is where it's at for this conversation today. That's it's incredibly challenging. And if I may, if I could comment, Dylan, on what you said, then perhaps I'd be really interested in Ian and Eddie's observations. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Dylan. The world of sales training, alleged sales best practice, is driven by an American culture where we've got these huge global organizations with typically funded by people who want the biggest possible return on their capital employed, and they are driving sales, and frontline salespeople are the cog in that engine, and they are driven to achieve the numbers regardless, and the end goal is the achievement of the numbers. Top priority is the achievement of the numbers, not whether or not customers achieve measurable success with their investment. And this to me is the absolute heart of the contrast in values. Do we genuinely prioritize outcomes for customers, or do we prioritize achieving quota? Now, our belief, I suspect, as a group, is that they're not incompatible. That the pursuit of doing it right will actually lead directly to better relationships.
Yeah.
But Ian, Eddie, I'd be really interested in your observations on this.
Yeah, sorry, Ian, you go.
Sorry, Eddie, you go.
No, please.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Peter, that there is no difference. There is no different side of the ledger to what is right for the selling organization and what is right for the buying organization. But that is not a case that has been effectively made to sales leadership. So they have not yet reconciled their insatiable thirst, driven by chief executives and chief financial officers in the main, to achieve quota, and having this understanding and being prepared to deliver the kind of value that is being looked for by their customers. And I think that our challenge is, how do we bridge that gap? How do we talk to sales leadership in a way that is persuasive, so that they say sales transformation is our best way, if not our only way, to achieving the quota, which is causing the pressure to be on us every day from those in a position of executive authority.
Just to, I guess, chime in with my perspectives, I think, yeah, you're definitely right, Dylan. A lot of what you see on LinkedIn is these salespeople who are talking about kind of seller-centric ways to sell, in essence. And I think, Peter, you're right, because a lot of these pressures, what I observe, is from these US companies who are typically kind of VC backed or PE backed. So there's definitely that pressure that, okay, I've invested this much, I want to see the return on it. Don't care how you get there, which is key. Don't care how you get there, just get there kind of thing. And I think it's so misguided and so misaligned with how customers actually want to kind of buy. I think I remember seeing somewhere, I don't know if it was on the group, or maybe we spoke about it, but just in terms of like how do you get salespeople or sales leaders to have this at the forefront of their mind? I think one of the easiest ways to do it is, as a starter, is to literally ask their customers how they want to be sold to, because I think that degree of 360 feedback in a way shines the light on what they're doing bad. Because I think what we typically find with the mindset survey, for example, is that a salesperson will often rate themselves so much higher than they actually are. You know, they'll answer it in a way where they
Always.
think, okay, yeah, exactly. But then I think the real kicker is when you flip it and you ask 3 or 5 customers to fill out the survey based on that salesperson. Because what you then see is the total misalignment of like,
Yeah.
okay, the salesperson thinks he's selling authentically, client-centrically, proactively creative, and tactfully audacious. But then you'll look at what customers say about them, and maybe, you know, on an average base or even individual base, where they're not, those scores are so off.
Manipulative, directive, wanting to talk
Exactly.
about what they're selling, unempathetic.
Exactly. Exactly. So when you think about transformation, what we learn on the program is there sometimes needs to be like a dramatic kind of event that needs to happen in order for someone to want to even consider transforming. That could potentially be an event. If I'm thinking, okay, if a salesperson hears that they're not selling in a way that customers want to be, their customers in particular want to be sold to, how does that leave the salesperson? Does that leave them thinking, oh, I'm just going to carry on doing it this way because it's worked? Or does it make them think,
One thing I remember sitting there listening to Graham's story about Royal Mail. And one said to him, you know, this was when I was at Toshiba, and someone said, oh, what was your biggest mistake? And he said, our biggest underestimation was we trained the salespeople, not the management. We trained the salespeople to or the customer service to go out and sell, but we didn't train the managers how to manage. And I thought that was really, really sort of an obvious point when someone says it, but it's quite often overlooked. So for me, it was 100%. We started with the managers, start with the management team.
Yeah, it's. I remember you saying that in the early days, that you needed to get your sort of guiding coalition, if you like, as we know from the transformation sort of practices that we have on the masters, and that it was very interesting in the way that you picked, you know, to us the people that that you felt were supporting your message. But even so, I think you found, you know, with some of those managers over a period of time, you realize that they're perhaps paying lip service, I think, to the why. And it's extraordinary, isn't it? That, you know, it's extraordinary that it's extraordinarily difficult to know if people are actually with you, even because people do a lot to kind of say, well, you know, we'll say the right things to Carl to make Carl think we're doing things in the right way, but actually we're going to run the business as we did before. You know, don't worry. I think that was some of the,
you know, that muscle there. Yeah, that is, and it's, look, I guess it's a frustration, but it was an expectation I had.
Okay.
You know, you get some people who will just tell you what you want to hear. You know, no matter what the consequence, they'll tell you what you want to hear, and it's. I forget the psychological experiment where, you know, people would just do what they do because they feel there's a hierarchy above them. Someone you're talking about so and so. I heard someone was talking about on the radio the other day. But anyway, it's that. So you know that because you're so-called got the stripes, that people will tell you what you want to hear. So I've never ever led any team, or I kind of try not to use the word leader or manager or anything like that, because I always say to my team, I do a job. I'm part of a team. and my job in that team is XYZ. I have a role in this team just like everyone else. And I think if you can build the respect of the team that you're on a level, then people won't necessarily tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm always wary of the ones who always agree with me.
Yeah.
And I guess so. I'm not saying I want a load of people who argue with me, but I don't get everything right. I haven't got all the answers. That's why I build a team around me. And I think you know quite quickly. I would say my skill is not an academic one. It's more of I do understand people and I can read people quite well. And I think so. Those that very quickly those people come to the fore.
Yeah.
Very quickly for a whole host of things, because what they don't realize is they might not be buying in to what you're saying, but the people below, the people that are within those teams that they work with, they are buying into it. So
Yeah.
when they're not receiving perhaps other teams are, or what you're telling, they very quickly, because you've not put yourself on that pedestal, you put everyone on the same level, they're quite comfortable in coming to you and saying, well, this isn't happening in our region, or this isn't happening in our office. So those individuals came to light quite quickly.
Yeah.
And there's different reasons for people not doing it, but the one thing I picked up from my fascination with military leadership is that you nip things in the bud quickly, so address problems quite quickly, and they don't become as big. So when with those issues, we did deal with them quite quickly. And sometimes when you change in the culture as drastically as we did, there's an inevitability that you'll lose people. There is, going into it thinking we're not going to lose anyone, you'd be incredibly naive. So that people aren't going to be on board for the journey. There's perhaps going to be some who want to be on board with the journey but won't make it. And I think as long as you treat people fairly and deal with that in the right way, it's just an expected part of transformation.
When we start to look at sort of sales capability, we look at different things. We look at obviously skills and competencies, and we look at technology, obviously, and then we also look at mindset and the way sort of people's attitudes and their values and belief systems as being a critical component. What are your thoughts about those three buckets, if you like? Which do you think, if you can, they're all important, but if you were to focus on getting one of those three right, what would it be? Is it the technology? Is it the skills? Is it the mindset? What would you say?
Yeah, I'm with you with all of them in terms of technology, mindset, and values. But I'll talk a little bit about mindset, because I think that's a big one, and I think of Carol Dweck's book on the topic of mindset, and from a salesperson's perspective, it is having the right, and when I say right, the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and from that book, and I'm really highlighting that the growth mindset is the mindset around possibilities and what's possible, and focusing on solution oriented opportunities versus this can never happen, there's a challenge, and then that's where technology can play a part, because if I'm having more of a growth mindset, then I'm going to figure out and even leveraging that technology to help, versus the fixed mindset, can't be done, we can't meet their needs, this is not going to work, and you're not even going to be open to exploring the possibilities. So I'd say mindset is going to lead to the technology, and then even potentially understanding the values within others, because that's another important part to play in terms of the values of an organization, the values of your culture, the values of the individual, and the more we can connect on that level, because now you're going below the surface with the iceberg.
With
when
the
you get
iceberg.
into values, and that makes much more of a deeper, richer connection.
the ability of an account manager to connect two customers together who have a mutual interest in achieving a certain goal, where you as the supplier may not be the involved in that particular opportunity, can go a long way to actually helping you with both of those customers to develop a stronger relationship. And so when we start to look at relationships, and it's not just the supplier customer canvas, if you like, that you're painting on. It's actually looking at the entire ecosystem. And I think that those salespeople that can see connections between people and between companies and effect introductions, going back to your point, it's so much easier to start a new conversation if there's been a personal introduction, but being a conduit of connections, a conduit of relationships, can also stand you in quite good stead when it comes to either of those organizations sort of reconnecting with you, because they can, they appreciate the work that you've done, and at some point, it may come back to benefit you with each of those clients. I don't know if you've got any thoughts around that nature as well.
Yeah, you used a great term there, Phil, ecosystem, and I think that is the right thinking to adopt in the modern world. And I will relate back to my PhD. There was through the process of building a relationship. This is the research I did. There's a term that is described. It's called mutual disclosure. So before trust is built, obviously you're meeting someone for the first time. They don't know you, you don't know them, and then you want them to trust you. So there's a phase between that initial meeting and trust forming called mutual disclosure. And there's three real elements to it. And it's around not selling to them, not feeling as though you're trying to sell to them. There shouldn't be a clash of personalities. Obviously, if you click, great, but shouldn't be a clash of personalities. But the key factor here is your knowledge, your expertise in enabling them to be successful. And what I presented in my research was those three things combined are the initial emergence of mutual disclosure, and then this person will start to understand that you can help them and start to share some of the things that are important to them and start to build trust, which will come as phase two. But that really links to how you're able to build those relationships. And I think with that innate understanding of what clients are looking for, if you're then able to then point them to specific individuals that may be able to help them, they will perceive you as someone who is very well connected in their industry. And again, you're elevating yourself in their eyes as the famed trusted partner or a consultative type relationship than just another sales guy. And I think your research and mine came up with very similar statistics and sort of disdain, if you will. My research, I interviewed CXOs from global corporations and asked them about the best person that they've ever worked with in their career. And throughout those interviews, there was a real disdain for the average salesperson, as they would describe them as, and the proportions of average versus the good was literally 9 out of 10 are average, interested in selling their products and all this type of stuff. So if you want to distinguish yourself as being different, you have to operate on a different level, and you've got to leave your sales quota and your particular objectives in your role to one side and really think about how you can help the client achieve their objectives. And I think yours will follow naturally from there, but it's got to be in the right sequence, and certainly introducing them to executives that they respect or working in companies that they consider to be peers is a fantastic way to build your own credibility as part of the general process of relationship building.
I think one of the things that I was interested in is where you said about, is the SDR model different or changed? So I got back from holiday sort of mid-August, and I spent a bloody lot of time looking in AI tools, automated tools, and what the market looks like at the moment. From auto dialers to the AI dialers to the email only outbound and those. And I think when it comes back to it, I think the AI stuff is definitely going to help create far more applicable content. And I think create far more interesting second or third emails in sequences. But I still think the primary touch is going to be human to human, based with such specific nuance on why you right now, and why should you give a shit about what I think you give a shit about. I can't see that is ever going to get to be
and it's the person that for listening into the conversation between Eddie and Luke on AI. For me, it's AI as the enabler of the person, bringing some unexpected prompts, because AI might an AI could ask, and who are the other stakeholders? The AI can't then really engage. Eddie, where did you get to? If the conversation with you and Luke and your colleagues, if that had continued, what would have been the implication for Will in this situation?
I mean, it's a good question, because like you say, the AI world, it's evolving at like a rapid rate that, you know, we just don't know where we're going to be in like a month's time, a year's time. But as it stands now, you know, what we were talking about in that discussion was that AI can enhance the productivity side of things, we feel, but it can never, like Will alluded to, it can never kind of replace that human aspect of knowing really what your client or prospect is going through, right? You as the kind of sole relationship holder knows that person, well, should know that person kind of inside and out if you're truly displaying a client-centric mindset, right? The AI tool won't know that. The AI tool only kind of works with the input that you give it. So in one hand, you could potentially feed it information, and then it will start to come up with ideas around what you've given it. But then there's that whole kind of reflection piece that only humans can do, right? Only humans can reflect really on the situation at hand. And I think that's where like we were getting to with our conversation. And you know, there's still a long way to go, I think, for AI tools in this new world that we're living in. But to quote like what our CEO says, you know, we're living in this world of democracy now, where it's going to be the relationships that are bound by emotions in the sea of technology and all that are really going to be the ones that stand out in the sales industry, really.
And the challenge, Eddie, in what you just said, seems to be that if we accept, as indeed we must, that AI moving towards AGI and all that is implied in that, is in a very short space of time going to be able to carry out the processes that we as human beings currently carry out more efficiently, more effectively, at less cost than we do it, then what we're going to be left with is our humanity and that ability to form relationships with each other of the kind that you have described. And in my work, it seems that sales transformation seems to crystallize in that context around how do we enable people to become more aware of themselves and the value that that represents to clients over and above what those people are able to do by bringing value to clients. So the question still remains for salespeople: who are you, and what is it that is in your intrinsic self that represents value for the people who are your customers? Seems to be the fundamental core challenge that we face in working with people in the sales transformation space.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although I do think I've only ever sold tech, and I do actually think the sales role is still fundamentally can't be digitally replaced.
Right.
Because I think it will always come down to the subtlety between the who, the why.
So we've got a saying in our business, because within the tech world, you're always looking at ways to show value faster, right? And, you know, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right?
Yep.
And somebody mentioned a moment ago around the prompt generation. That's where the standout comes in. I mean, if a SDR uses a tool and helps them stand out because of the quality of their prompts, that's where it comes in. Well, I'm 100% with you. You need that human element, Ian, as well. You need that human element, right? But you need to be the smartest person in the room. But I don't need to go study an engineering degree to be a smartest person in the room with an engineering group. I just need to understand what's important to them. An example I've used was, I got a lead for a company in the UK. I know nothing about them. And I just went ChatGPT 4, right? And I was like, please act as this role. And you need to unpack the details about this company. Tell me who this company is. And it comes through, boom. And then I was like, all right, so tell me about their competitors. Tells me about their competitors. Okay, so what regions are they in? Oh, put the competitors and the regions in a table to show me where they're competing. And I've got now a 2-page document about the customer, further insights. They may be completely far off, but it's about how you leverage the prompts strategically. Don't just throw up a prompt and give it an essay and expect it to come up with something good. An example, well, I think you mentioned it a moment ago around, I think Google LM, you spoke about sort of this competitive analysis. One of my roles currently is finding product use cases for Copilot for industry-specific use cases.
Mhm.
And I only know so much about the broad industries I've been had the privilege of being in, but I'm not an expert, right? So I would build out a potential product and a potential offering, and that would be 3 or 4 different prompts to get it to where I want it to be. And then I would take it to Copilot again, or I'd take it to Copilot and be like, assume the role of a buyer. Okay, tell me how this stacks up. Do you see this? What am I missing? Okay, put this as a business analyst who's designing this product. What should I be considering? What should I be adding? Then the third prompt I gave it was, you're a competitor of mine. What are you picking up from here? And the amount of detail and insight you get, where traditionally working in a tech space as sellers, right? Hands up, we're not the most technical person in the room, but we know how to connect people. Now, if I'm relying on a pre-sales technical person who needs to do deep dive Azure or security protocols or anything like that, why don't I just use the AI tool? I've done 80% of the work. I give the last 20% to that pre-sales person just to vet it and maybe pick it apart. And that's where AI is going to be that tool that is going to help people stand out if used better. Because we can all see, we all follow blogs, we all read these things, and you can tell what's been written by GPT because it's almost got a design to it.
Mhm.
And you can see it quite easily in the language it's using. But what's going to make sellers stand out is when they step into the room and they know about the customer. And, you know, I think gone are the days of I'm going to a customer whose main logo is red and I'm going to wear red as a subliminal messaging. And, you know, oh, I know about your company's goals and or your vision and all the soft squishy stuff. Like, that's good to know, but you need to show that value. So it's not just coming in and saying, oh, you know what, the industry is showing these trends, you've got a problem. Like, they know they've got a problem. It's about coming to them with a solution. And I don't know if anybody else is experiencing, but sales cycles are becoming longer and longer. Like, it is so tough where you would have a 3-month sales cycle is now 6 months because there's so much information. So finding a way to show that value quicker, to get the signature on the paper quicker, the proverbial signature, if we use paper these days, but to get that quicker is tough. So it's about use the tools you have available to you, but you've got to be smart about it. Otherwise, you will see a difference. It's like when Google came out. We would ask Google questions. We're just asking a layer on top of Google to find all the answers for us. And we'll, like you, I would put in reference websites, reference this, find me terms and conditions in here, find me competitors, and bring that all to me. And it scrapes those websites in seconds. And the insights, use at your own risk, obviously, but apply yourself to those outputs and don't just rely on them, obviously.
You have to understand, obviously, what motivates and makes people what they are. And obviously, when you introduce a multiple product portfolio to salespeople that are used to selling single products,
Yeah.
Very few people, if any, have really mastered it. And
Yeah.
we haven't got the luxury of employing a salesperson for every product line we offer with one customer. So it came about, and this is where the wider network or the wider stakeholders were involved, because a lot of that is you need to invest in other areas to generate sales. People.
Right.
I think the mistake some people make is, well, we need to increase our sales. Let's employ more salespeople. And my argument was always, well, there's no point in me employing more salespeople unless I could generate more opportunity for those salespeople and support the sale they're going to do. So we put a lot of time and energy into what supported the salespeople. So subject matter experts, account, execs to be able to support and continue to. But we did a lot of work about widening your circle of influence within your client, know your customer. So we set some non-negotiables, and then we mapped that through some software or an application, and then teaching the managers to manage in that way. And that, I think, again, that comes down to the hard part. The hard part is not transforming the salespeople. You can motivate the salespeople, you can educate the salespeople, you can put a pay plan in place which shapes behavior. You can do all those things, but if they don't know how to do and they're not managed in a way, that it all falls flat. So one thing I've noticed is, second you take your eye off or your focus away from the middle management, is when it all goes wrong.
Phil, I mean, I think you might be even more under the spotlight.
I will. Yes.
Next year,
No,
because we're gonna look back at your research.
we are. We're going to, one of the things that we're setting up, and it'd be great for listeners who are interested in this to get in contact with me, is that, a lot of what has happened with Consalia has been because of the doctorate that I did, in 2004 to 2009.
Quickly, just give us the title of the doctorate that you did. Maybe not the full title.
I was going to say the full title.
I did write the full title down just this morning, actually, but I keep on forgetting it because it's so damn long. It's something like, how can a client values-based mindset help in the co-creation of a new sales model, something along those lines. But you could shorten it to, how do customers want to be sold to, which is where we're going. But what that was 20 years, approaching 20 years ago now, that I started that research and then tested it within the construct of the doctorate. But there's been massive changes in how business operates, and there's been the pandemic as well that's had certain impact on our ability to, I think, connect with people, and so I'm really interested to go back to that research data, go back to the kind of questions that was asked in that research, and to recalibrate, to say, has the needle moved in any way from those days? Are there, because we defined that, the 4 differentiating values, which I won't go into now, that successful teams demonstrate. I mean, we knew then that less than 10% of salespeople, demonstrated those values according to customers. So essentially, it's going back to that sort of premise of, or, the outputs, asking the same questions, doing the thematic analysis across those by interviewing. We want to interview a minimum of 100 customers. It's going to be a lot easier now because we've got technology that can help us. And we're working with some of our international partners. So the Sales Research Institute in South Korea, that's assuming they're not still under martial law, as we heard this morning. But we've got our team out there who's interested in running the APJ assessment. Of course, we've got Europe, and we've got our partners, the Summit Group in America. And so this will be an international, global, really important kind of research, which will help sort of see how the needle has moved since the first research was conducted. And I can safely say that this is the only research program that I've seen at academic levels that has studied values it's the only study that's done. So it's hugely important if we believe that values are important in how we sell. So yeah, next year's GST will be sharing those kind of results and seeing has the needle changed in any way. We may be able to get some of the customers to come and talk at next year's GSD event as well. So yeah, really looking forward to it. So yeah.